Hi everybody, good afternoon. This is Jean here. Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I am working on my Rowing Along with Jean quilt. At this point I've done the pinwheel, large pinwheel block and a smaller tulip block, which I've only done 4 of each. Because as you know, when you saw the tulip block, I may be filling that in with an applique. I just wanted to do 4 blocks. But as I'm going along, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, at this point, I've only done 2 blocks, right? 2 rows, but I want to change it up and I want to make some kind of sashing and or border. I'll get there in the end, to change things up. And what I've come up with is, I've done this on previous tutorials years ago on how I make a checkerboard border, okay? This is, or a sashing. This is going to be a little scrappy sashing checkerboard. Don't worry, you don't have to cut out a million different little squares. I show you how to do it with strip piecing. Very simple this week. Just a little bit smaller units we're working, but still, for a beginner, very, very simple and a scrappy method of using up those scraps. I do it in strips from my fat quarters, but if you just have scraps, you know, you can just put them on the, you can just put it on the solid as I describe it, just scrap after scrap after scrap, and then we subcut them. So this little tutorial to follow is how I made my little scrappy, very quick and very, I think it's very satisfying, a sashing and or a border. So I do hope you enjoy this, folks. I hope you thanks again, folks. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye. So this is my first couple of weeks making my blocks. I had said last time that I was going to only be making 4 of these blocks and then some more churn dash blocks, which I will be coming up. This is my pinwheel row, my very simple 12-inch, and then these are my 4 tulip pieced blocks. As you can see, what I'm doing here is, I think this is only 48 inches wide. This is going to be a smaller quilt. I could add another pinwheel block. I'm not quite sure. As I always say, this is evolving. For beginners, I think this is a decent size now, but you're saying, well, what goes in there? Well, I'm not quite sure because I thought, oh, I'll do a whole row of tulips, but the math doesn't match up. But when I put them that way, the blocks going that way and that way, I thought, oh, that would be a nice place for an applique, perhaps a heart or a butterfly. But what I'm going to do, because I just want to break from these blocks, not that they were hard or anything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, again, to be put in somewhere in the quilt, I'm going to be making a little checkerboard sashing, just a small little sashing. Again, this is not the configuration of my quilt. I don't know how it will be. I think this will be a row with a little applique, and that will be a row, but I don't know if it's going to go up or down or wherever it's going to go. So this week's sort of tutorial, to give us a break from all of the blocks, we're going to be doing something very simple. And again, it's just, I'm just making these piecemeal, and then we'll put it all together at the end of the day. I'm wanting to make a sort of like a checkerboard unit, okay? And it's going to just be a bunch of 4 patches put together, but it's going to be scrappy, okay? So what it's going to be is, I'm going to make a unit like that and that. I won't bore you. A little checkerboard between my rows. I might have a row of flying geese, my little checkerboard. I'm going to do that right now. So what I've done is, I have here about 5 pieces of my fat quarter on the 20-inch line, on the 22-inch. I just want a small little border or a little sashing. Yeah, I think I'll just do 1.5 inches for each of my fat quarters and my background fabric, and my white, which will be my script fabric, which is right down on the floor. So this is my 2 ruler method. If you haven't seen me do this before, I'm finding the 1.5 inches, going up there all the way down, holding my ruler, and then I just press. That is going through 5. Yeah, that is going through 5 lots of fabric. And then what I'm going to do, there's my lovely strips right there. Very, very simple to make 4 patches. I'm going to show you. I'm going to cut. all my strips of my 1.5 inch strips of fat quarter, and then my 1.5 wide strips of my script fabric. All I'm doing is I'm going to be putting them on top of each other. I don't have to pin this, but it's very, very important. Very important. I've told you before, when you're sewing strips, not to stretch them. All we're doing is laying the top strip onto the bottom, 1/4 inch. We're just laying it on. Now, because I cut this from the width of my fabric, and this is just the fat quarter, the colored strips, I'll just have to cut that like so. Or actually, I'll just continue, yeah, I just continue putting the strips on. 1/4 inch. We're going to be subcutting these and making little sweet 4-patch units. I did this on a jelly roll quilt years ago. I made like a checkerboard border. This is just going to be sashing, just to break up our rows. Now, as you can see, I'm coming to the end of that strip. It has a selvage. I'm not even going to bother with that because we're going to subcut it. What I'll do is I'll just add another strip underneath, just like that. Overlap the selvages because obviously we'll cut off this. And obviously I'm doing, sorry, I didn't mention for you beginners, I'm doing the pretty sides together, right? You should know that by now. The right sides of the fabric to the right side of the fabric, okay? The pretty side to the pretty side, and then we're sewing the seam. And again, do not pull or you'll get a nasty curve and it'll stretch. You're just laying the top onto the bottom strip, keeping your 1/4 inch. And then we're going to have little tiny units, but they won't be hard, and it'll be very effective. You'll see. From your scraps, you can make this. If you don't have fat quarters, you can just use scraps. But again, with sort of a grounding fabric, which is my script. Coming to the end, and I just will start another strip right there. Let that overlap and grab another, where is it? Another script fabric. Again, pretty side down. Just overlap that. That'll be cut off. And I'll just continue making these, and then a ton of them, because we're going to need quite a few. Because I'll probably have this in several places as sort of sashing. I'll see how it goes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over. You see that? That's fine. That's going to get cut off. I'm going to subcut these. I'm going to go over and I'm going to press. I'm going to set this seam, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to press. Just gently roll that very carefully. Just roll that seam up to the dark side. I'll iron that really nice. Press that strip really well, the whole thing, and then we'll subcut them, and then we'll make our little 4 patches. Now, when we are ironing a long strip such as this, you want to be careful that you don't skew it, and it can, because it's a long piece, you can get very wobbly, our seam. We want to keep it as straight as possible. As you can see, I've done here. I just do a small bit at a time. Don't worry about that. That's where the this is where we just kept sewing and kept sewing. So what I do is, with the darker side up on top, what I do is I set that seam, and then I do take a little bit of spray, either sizing or a little bit of starch, and then keeping everything really straight. In fact, I have this striped ironing board. I can actually keep that straight on my ironing board, I just roll that seam up and just do a little bit at a time, because you can sort of get it a little bit curvy, and you don't want to do that. So I have my entire strip here of my 1.5 inch strip sewn together. What I'm going to do now is it's just in the frame here. I'm just going to cut these off into about the same size, and you'll see why. Doesn't really matter. We are going to have some waste at the end of the day, just a little bit. But I'm just going to continue cutting these just off roughly to the same size. And you'll see why I do this. It's been ironed pretty well. Keep it nice and straight. Well, at this point, you just cut them off to a manageable size. You may even want to do it a bit smaller, but I'm okay doing it this way. Oh, it's interesting because all of those are blue and green. Look at that. Oh, I do have a bit of yellow here. Yeah. I have some more over there on my ironing board that I have to make. Oh, here's a bit of orange. I grabbed a lot of red there. I'll put that up there. And that's good. Okay, so I'm just going to take about, how many of these? Let's see. I'm going to take about 5 of them. Okay, and I'm going to put them on my board. Now, because we've pressed them really well, I can see on my martelling mat here, my line is really quite even. And that line right there is really good. I'm just going to overlap the white onto the bottom of the other color. Okay, just going to overlap that. Keeping my lines nice and straight on my cutting board. My cutting mat, as best we can, like so. And actually I can do a few more. Like so. And again, I'm just keeping that line straight along there. And my line straight over there. You can see I can do quite a few here. Now again, you're saying, oh, what about that one? Doesn't matter. You'll see what happens. Okay, so I'm just going to move my camera over a little bit over here. And again, I'm going to get out my Fiskars ruler. Let me just move these over here so I have my whole length of my cutting board. So my Fiskars ruler here. Everything is nice and lined up on my cutting mat. And I'm going to neaten up those edges. My lines are nice and straight on my ruler. There you can see. I'll just neaten up this edge. Take them off. And then again, with my 2 ruler method, I'm going to be cutting 1.5 inch segments. So find my 1.5 inch, right, which is right there. And I will start cutting 1.5 inch segments. Oops. So I have my huge pile, whether I use them all up or not, but you'd be surprised because they're just tiny little units we're making. But don't be frightened of them. Again, all we're going to do is we're going to see if that's a good one. Yep. All we're going to do is we're going to put these together like that. We're going to nest our little seam there. One is going one way, the other is going the other way. And we're just going to make a ton of 4 patches. 1/4 inch seam. Again, you might be tempted to do it, you know, a smaller seam, but don't. And then I'm just going to continue pulling and making little lovely 4 patches. Now again, you see that's where the other one, I could just pull that off, that's fine. That's where the other, where we connected them. Just figure out if they're nice. Just continue making your 4 patches. You'll be here month of Sundays. Chain piecing. Like that. Don't rush this. I'll just do a few more and then I'll show you what we're going to do with these now. Just put that there. A bit fiddly. Really, look at that. Once you start adding and adding and adding, doing 2, 4, 6, 8, it just adds, it makes a really nice long strip. I mean, I'll be here quite a while, but that's okay. It's very, you know, interesting to do, and yeah, I quite enjoy it. So yeah, oh, it's so pretty. Look how quickly that made up. So just remember that for a border or for sashing, different sizes. Now obviously this is not how the configuration of my quilt will be, or it may or may not. As you see, as I was saying in my previous video, whenever I made 4 tulip blocks, but you're saying, well, what's going in there? I'm looking at it up on my design tablecloth here, and I'm thinking, well, maybe later on, I will do a small applique in there. Just make a heart or butterfly or something in there, or another couple tulips, maybe applique, whatever. But I like the fact this is only 48 inches wide, but if I do add another 10 over here or another 10 over here, it will be however much, you know, 58, 68, 70 inches wide or whatever, and I'll make it a little bit taller. But these are my 8 blocks I have made so far for our rows. 4 pinwheel, 4 pieced tulip blocks, and as you can see, the blocks can go either way. I could have them all going that way or that way. That's the beauty of them. And then I just made this. This is the following tutorial is my little Scrappy checkerboard. No, you did not cut out a million little squares. It's very, very simple. Works up really quickly, really quickly. We are just making small little 4 patches and putting them together, but I show you how to do that. So there's our first sort of 3 rows. I put it up here. Again, this is not how it's going to be. Maybe or maybe not. I will probably, on the top of my little patch, checkerboard patch, sashing here, I left a gap there, as you can see, and a gap there. I may fill that, put on either side a small ½ inch or quarter inch or inch strip of a solid fabric. That lovely little checkerboard. I think that's so sweet. I think it brings a lot of life to a pretty quilt. All right, folks. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy the video. Bye-bye.